There's a bite. There's a bite. There's a bite. There's a bite. Welcome to another episode of Bass with Captain Lou. Guys, I'm back with bank fishing again, and this is the continuation of my bank fishing series. I told you guys I'm going to be shooting some of these throughout the year. I had some time to spare. I didn't go out in the big boat today, so decided to do some bank fishing. Today's topic is going to be stick baits. So the stick bait. Stick bait can be fished a few different ways. One way is weightless, and the second way is weighted. Weightless, the lure or the bait has enough weight to it alone that it could cast with most outfits. Most bait casting and spinning outfits quite easily. And that helps because the bait itself, when it's weightless, it appears in its most natural way, which is very enticing for bass. The other way is weighted. Weighted you do when you're faced with a couple of situations. In my particular case, when I'm fishing from the bank, it's either a weather event that's causing me to add weight, meaning there's a lot of wind, and another part is the depth. Some areas that I do fish are a little bit deeper than others, and I just want it to get down just a little bit faster because the bite happens to be towards the bottom of the water column, so I add a little bit of weight to that. The key is to find the right weight balance. If you overpower it, it kills the way the bait looks in the water. The lightest weight possible is going to be one of the key things to help you get more bites. And another reason why use weight is to increase your casting distance. In this particular example, this is a park that I fish, and I know this area well. It's an immense flat. The first 25 to 30 yards is an immense flat, and the ledge doesn't start till after that 30-yard mark. So I need the extra weight if the fish are holding by the ledge to get to them. There's a bite. There's a bite. There, oh, had a bite. Had a bite. He had it. As you're fishing the stick bait, you got to take careful notes in identifying how your bait or how the stick bait is being taken by the bass. Is the bait being hit while it's descending? Is the stick bait being hit when it's being moved? Is the stick bait being hit when it's settling on the bottom? So these are little tips and tricks that you should have to keep in mind when using the stick bait, is identifying the type of bite so you can anticipate it as you're fishing. This next part is easier said than done when it comes to fishing stick baits, and that is the speed that you fish the bait. The slower, the better. Again, that is easier said than done, because the bait shines when it's in its most natural form, which is moved slowly. It's very subtle movements, and it's very, very enticing for bass. A lot of the reasons I believe that we as anglers miss the opportunity to capitalize on a stick bait bite is because we need to fish it slower. Sometimes we think bigger is better, and that's the case in some instances. However, when it comes to when you're trying to find the bite, I still use the stick bait, but I'll switch. So for example, I'll switch to a different size. This is what I was using, and now I'm gonna go ahead there. As you guys can see, I'm using 1/8 of an ounce. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go ahead and fish the smaller one with the same weight. And if I don't get any bites, then I'm gonna go ahead and stay with the small one, but use a much lighter weight and see if that changes things. So again, you start experimenting until the bass tell you what is it that they're looking for that day. There's a bite. There's a bite. There's a bite. There's a bite. Decent. And sometimes bass brings clues to you. Look at the clue. Look at the clue of where they may be hiding. You see? Vegetation. Still decent bass. Whoa, that's the first. So let me break down this bite and show you guys what happened. Over here outside, like I mentioned, about 20 to 25 yards out, there's a big sparse pads of grass. What I did was I was fishing the bases of that grass slowly and noticed that I downsized to a much smaller, to about a 4-inch stickworm versus the 6 that I was using. Of course, I got to catch more than one fish to determine that, but so far we're moving in the right direction. Also keeping note of the pickup. The pickup happened when the bait or when the worm was settling. I wasn't moving it. I was just standing here and I felt the tick, and then I saw the line fish off, the line swim away, so I knew it was a bite. So in this situation is where I choose to fish or use a bobber stopper or a weight stopper, and I'll show you guys that right now. So you see, I'm using the weight stopper. And the reason for it is because of the dense vegetation that I'm fishing offshore. I don't want my bait and my weight separating from each other. I don't like that because it gets hung up for me, and it gives me I misread the bite, and that's just me. Some guys love doing that, and I can understand why they do it. But in my particular case, I like the weight attached to my stick bait. And then what I'm doing now is I'm just moving the weight. I can feel the resistance of the grass, but by that same token, I can feel the worm moving on the base of the grass. Now, this type of fishing can be very productive, especially when the bass are holding in the grass. However, if you don't have the proper outfit, you may be outgunned. And what do I mean by outgunned? If you use a spinning outfit in this example, although you may get a lot more bites because of the lighter line, and I'll talk about that later, you may not have enough power or rod power to be able to pull the bass out of that distance in that grass. Because due to the distance, it's cumulative. As soon as you start pulling grass, you'll be pulling more grass, and before you know it, you'll have maybe 10 pounds of grass. So you're gonna need yourself a stouter outfit and a little bit that's more forgiving. And that's why, like I mentioned previously, is I love fishing with a 734 or a 4-power rod, because it has the greatest rod tip in order for me to throw the bait. But when I need that backbone, I have it here to help fight the fish out of cover. There's the bait. It's a nice fish. So I'm keeping the rod up on purpose so I could get it out of the grass easier. But this is a decent fish. This is a very nice fish, actually. Look at this one. That's a beauty. Look at the colors of this. Again, right where you want it, right in the roof of the mouth. So it was great. It wasn't going anywhere. Okay, so that's 2 bites. That one basically hit while the stickworm was descending down the water column behind the grass. Always make a mental note where you had the last bite, because it could be more than one fish, so keep that in mind. Today's outfit is one that you guys hear me talk about a lot because it's one of my favorites for T-rigging, and that's the 734 Champion SLX Shimano reel. I have 40-pound braid with a 15-pound fluorocarbon leader. The hook that I'm using is a Gamakatsu extra wide gap 3-aught hook, and I am currently using 1/8 of an ounce tungsten weight. Let me walk you guys back on that hit that I had. When I set the hook, I started reeling and kept my rod high. And I did that because I wanted to keep the fish's head up as high as I could on the water column, away from that grass or away from that vegetation. The reason for it is because these bass, when they're caught, they're not dumb. What they do is they dive down and then they dig inside that grass. And depending on the thickness of that mat, you could be done for because of the density of the vegetation. So again, depending on the distance that you're dealing with, you may have to set that hook, keep constant tension, and keep the rod up just to get that fish out of that cover. Another thing that helps, it helps having the wind at your back. Don't think that I'm doing these monster casts just because the wind helps behind me. Picking up the rod tip slowly, when you have the right amount of weight, you could feel the type of cover you're dealing with, or structure for that matter. Am I in grass? Is the grass high? Is the grass low? Am I dealing with rocks or ledges? You could feel the weight dragging the structure. So if it's a rock, you could feel it dragging over the rock. If it's pebbles or stuff like that, you can feel it, bouncing along. So utilize the bait, depending on the type of weight you're using. Utilize it to read the cover or structure that you're dealing with, and that's gonna also help you. Now, if you're fishing the worm weightless, then it's a little bit different. But weightless, you could read and feel the grass. So if you feel like tugging with no weight attached to it, you just still feel like a tug and then a tug and a tug, 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 that's mainly grass that you're feeling. So that's a good thing, because depending on the type of grass that you're fishing in, peppergrass, hydrilla, stuff like that, you could identify stuff that you haven't been able to see from the bank. But due to what the worm is telling you, you know that there's offshore vegetation. And if a hit happens around that area, then you know you got to focus your attention around the grass. There he is. There he is. That one hit right away. Yep, in the grass. See what I'm talking about, guys? Oh, I may lose this one. Oh. Yep. There he goes. Wouldn't have been able to do that with a spinning outfit. This guy's been caught before. Little guy. But you can identify if a bass has been caught before. In this case, you see that this little jelly, red jelly mark here? That's, most of the time, that's a hook. That's got him. That one hit when the worm was descending down the water column behind the patch of grass. So I'll take it, but the point is that I'm trying to make here is that the bass right now are hitting closer around the vegetation, and the hits are sudden. They're not little subtle pickups. These are sudden bites. Again, things to keep in mind. There was a fishing tip for you guys when you're fishing vegetation and you're caught in the grass way out there. So the worst thing you could do is go vertical and try to pull it out that way. It's just not going to work. So what you got to do is, what I like doing is I put my thumb on the spool tight and I point my rod tip towards the obstruction or where it's hung up on, and then I start pulling it or going backwards, and that usually drags it out, and I don't mess up my drag system because my thumb is holding onto the spool. Try that and you may salvage some hooks and stuff. Look at that. Did you guys see that? There's bait on top of the water and that bird just caught it. There he is. Keep a note of where the birds are. The birds told me where to cast on this one. Right above the mouth, right in the nose there. Perfect shot. I mean, a decent fish, nice little schoolie size. Look how beautiful and clean these fish are, huh? So like I mentioned, is take a look at where those birds are. Remember that I showed you guys in one of the clips that bird diving in the water and it pulled out some bait fish? Well, I walked over to this area and sure enough, as soon as this worm hit the water, that bass hit it. Again, guys, like I told you, when you're bank fishing, you have the opportunity to observe things because you're stationary. So take the time to do that. Again, those fish are schooling outside the grass area right now, and I just happened to be able to pick one off. So you gotta keep these things in mind when you're bank fishing. All right, guys, as I bring this video to a close, stick baits, don't leave home without them. I appreciate you guys for watching. Like this video, share the video, better yet, subscribe. You guys wanna go out bass fishing out in the Everglades, Lake Okeechobee, the marshland, give me a call, aeguideservice.com. Thanks again, guys. See you guys again soon.